Marketers of the world, why do we work hard to solve small problems? It's time to bring home bigger paychecks. It's time to create the lifestyle we deserve and to make a greater impact. This is the Fractional CMO Show, and I'm Casey Stanton. Join me as we explore this growing industry and learn to solve bigger problems. The Fractional CMO Show is sponsored by CMOX, the #1 company to teach you how to attract, convert, and serve clients as an in-demand fractional CMO.
From St. Charles, Missouri, just outside of St. Louis, co-author of Content Marketing for Local Search, an Amazon bestseller, marketing solutions architect and fractional chief marketing officer of Changescape Web, I'm here with Ken Tucker today. Ken and his team serve independent financial advisors and residential services companies across the country. They help create a comprehensive marketing strategy for their clients and execute it with his team of digital marketing experts. Ken, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Casey. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to jam and chat. You're inside the CMOX Accelerator, and I love getting to know you and your experience in, excuse me for a second, but like sometimes I think people think of like home services businesses kind of being like boring.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a really wonderful niche to be in. And it seems like you've got a ton of experience. Just before we started recording, you were talking about your experience in some of the different residential services company types like solar and things like that. And I'm excited to kind of like dig in about that because sometimes like the companies that we kind of take for granted as marketers, maybe we're like, oh, I want to work on the startup. Maybe what's really exciting is like kind of the stuff that's always going to be around. You're always going to have plumbing problems.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what's exciting about working with these businesses is that they actually had great years, most of them, even during the COVID economy. So it's been really rewarding to be able to work with the group of businesses that we have. They certainly had a unique set of challenges. We helped them kind of pivot to adjust, different ways of doing business. For example, the big thing was being able to offer virtual estimates. Many of these companies didn't really have the ability to do that. And so we encouraged our folks to jump on that quickly and make that happen. And now it's kind of become an ongoing option that actually can save them quite a bit of money and drive time and some of those kinds of things. So, it's always interesting to see how you have to adapt your business when the world changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dig in and talk about that. But one of the things that I think you know a lot about because you're the co-author of the book, Content Marketing for Local Search, is about content marketing for local search. So let's dive in and talk about that. First, why did you what is it about content marketing for local search that you think is so interesting?
Well, I think, there's been this phrase around for a long time, the content is king. And, that's probably a pretty tired phrase by now, but the reality is if you want to rank for search, especially in a local market, and by local market, I mean, if you serve an area, is specifically what we're talking about. Most of the, home services, and home remodeling contractors we work with, they serve an area that could be 10, 25 miles, in radius. And so you have to have content to increase the chance that you're going to be found online. And, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to go about creating this content. What do I do? And so I just felt like it was a gap that I saw that needed to be addressed. And so I worked with a couple of other marketing friends of mine, and we co-wrote the book really to help businesses understand the type of content they need, give them some strategies to create that content, or recognize this is bigger than what we should be focused on. And we need to focus on our business, and maybe it's something we need to hire experts to do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That makes sense. So, I mean, it's pretty simple. Anyone listening to this, they kind of understand the basics, which is if someone has a search query on Google and you want to resolve in the top ranks for it, you need to have the content that's better than the other content that's out there. It's kind of that mix between as good of or better than content with enough domain reputation to be able to rank.
Yeah.
But how do you get these companies that kind of say the same thing that other companies would say? I would think like home services company, like plumbers in St. Louis say the same thing as plumbers in Philadelphia. So how do you create any content there that's actually unique or defensibly unique?
Yeah. Well, first of all, every piece of content that we do write and create is unique, and we run it through tools to make sure that Google sees it as unique. Otherwise, you run the risk of being seen as duplicate content, which isn't penalizing, but it's not helpful from an SEO perspective. And you certainly never want to plagiarize. And so we write unique original content.
And then tell me, why don't you want to plagiarize? I know it's like in school you get in trouble for like, plagiarizing, but like, why is it bad to actually plagiarize on the web? Do you get hurt by Google? Is Google crawling and seeing that a site that has a sitemap with a post that's older than yours is the same content and they hurt you?
Yeah, Google is going to establish what they call the canonical URL. And so that's where Google is going to attribute the first posting of that piece of content from a search engine optimization perspective. And usually the place that publishes it and has a Google crawl first almost always gets that canonical URL. Everywhere else that it finds that piece of content, it doesn't penalize you. It's not going to make you drop in the rankings, but it's not going to help you. Google's going to ignore that content on the other sites that it finds that content published
Wow.
on. And we're going to talk about, financial advisors here in a bit. That's an area where a lot of people sign up for syndicated content where all of the content that's written goes out to, dozens, hundreds, thousands of other advisors out there. It's literally the same content. If they think that that's helping them from a search engine optimization perspective, it's not.
This is what you mean. Like a financial advisor gets pitched by some marketing platform or firm, and they say, just pay us $49 a month, and you'll get access to a weekly newsletter that you can stick your branding on and send out from you.
Or put on your website or both.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Putting it on the website gives them
email
value.
is actually, I'm sorry.
Putting it on the website gives them zero value, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And it does give them a little bit of value in the sense that if site visitors are on there, maybe it's useful information for them to read, but from an SEO perspective, there's zero value.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, it's just, it's a challenge, obviously, because, painters, roofers, like you mentioned, a lot of these businesses, how do you really make them different? And I think one thing is really just to focus on the problems that you solve. And actually, that's a really key element to search engine optimization because people are searching more and more based on the way they express their problems. And if you have content on your website or when they land on the homepage of your website and you speak to the problem that they have, you got them. Because guess what? 90% of your competitors or more, and usually within market, very few competitors, if any, are doing that.
Mhm.
And so you immediately stand out. And so that's one great way to differentiate yourself. And I think it's important too, to realize that, people express problems in different ways. I'm a big fan of StoryBrand. I love how simply it helps you understand how you need to create a clear message. And people usually are looking at problems from two perspectives. One is um, expressing an external problem, and then how they express the internal problem. So the external problem is, and I can speak from this from experience right now. I have a toothache, and that's the way I express the external problem. So if I'm going to go look for a dentist, which I think is probably the person that can help me solve that problem, um, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go check out a few dental websites. But I might pick the dentist that addresses my internal concern or my internal problem, which might be every time I go to the dentist, I find it to be a painful experience, or I find it very stressful and, very anxious. And maybe that's why I decide to go to the dentist is because they say, hey, we specialize in pain-free dentistry, or we get that coming to the dentist's office is not something that anybody goes out of their way to do.
Right.
We help you, deal with a stressful situation in the least stressful way possible. That's not a very elegant way to say it, but if somebody speaks to that on their website, then that's going to sway my decision. And that's how I would look at differentiation, is if you can describe the problems that people have and provide content and guide people through that journey, you're going to win.
Yeah, I love it. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so talk to me about how you go ahead and create content. And let's just jump into the financial advisors. So the financial advisor, they can take the easy route, which is spend the $50, $100, whatever it is a month to get this content pre-written for them. But it's boilerplate, and every other financial advisor down the street can do the exact same thing. So if they want to differentiate and they want to actually have unique content, how do you create that?
I think most people are natural content creators.
Hmm.
They just don't realize that they're creating content that could easily be put onto the website. So and obviously with financial advisors, they have to deal with the world of compliance. So that's obviously a big challenge for them. But go back through your emails. Every time you respond to a customer in an email and you're solving a problem, that's potentially unique content that you could use to turn into a blog post. Maybe you record a video on it. Every frequently asked question you have. One of the things we're really excited about and we're working on right now with a lot of our clients is to develop a frequently asked questions set. A lot of people may have that on the website, but many people still don't. Again, questions are problems. Problems are what's the key for search engine optimization, in my opinion. The way you can write problem-based content and put that on your website. And so pick an ideal client and figure out what are the top frequently asked questions that they ask of you. And then what we're doing is we're kind of building this content stack where if somebody is comfortable doing it, create a video answering that frequently asked question. Video is incredibly powerful from a content repurposing perspective. You can take the video element, you can post that on YouTube, you can put it on Facebook natively as a video. You can share it, through social media, you embed it on your website. But then you take that video, you transcribe it. And that transcription is going to be what Google is going to crawl from an SEO perspective. And so plus when people are going to watch the video, most people are going to watch the video.
Right.
Some people may read the transcription. Video is the next best thing to being able to meet somebody face to face. And so you get a real feel for how it would be like working with somebody. While they're explaining how they would help you solve that problem. And so very, very powerful. Then you take that video, you chunk it out, turn it into smaller pieces that you can push out through social media. You can create social media posts, pulling out quotes if you didn't want to just chop up the video. And then it powers that whole engine. And then what we do is we write a press release that drives high quality inbound links to the blog post that we created from the video. And that little content machine is super potent because you're actually creating, half a dozen different pieces of content from just one effort. And so that's really, I think, a critical thing. We're all super busy and it's hard to sometimes sit at, and a lot of people, I think, actually, when they sit down and they try to write something at the keyboard or even on paper, they get writer's block or they get kind of frozen. And, video is a little bit tricky. You have to get comfortable doing it.
Sure.
But, we guide people through, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to produce these types of videos. I mean,
Right.
Having a smartphone, turning it landscape so that it's, the right orientation, like a TV screen, getting a nice backdrop, making sure that you've got the lighting and the audio, and then getting a teleprompter, makes it really easy to do these videos. And these videos can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes long. That's enough content that's going to give Google the ability to crawl that and search it and figure out what you're talking about. And
That's great. I got a quick question on that. On the teleprompter side, do you do like a proper teleprompter or do you just do like a computer screen?
I would just do there's an app, a couple of apps out there. I'm drawing a blank on what they are, but just set up an iPad on a different
Got it.
tripod right beside your video camera or your smartphone.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never used a teleprompter before, and I've always considered like the kind of 45-degree glass proper teleprompter shoot through it thing, and I just
Yeah.
haven't done it.
Yeah.
But just to put my iPad up next to the camera sounds a whole lot
Yeah.
easier.
Well, and now I'll get you the information of what this particular application is. I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head, but it actually will adjust the speed of the teleprompter to your voice. And if you go off script
Oh, that's fascinating.
and you elaborate, it'll pause and it'll pick it back up when you come back.
Oh, wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's only like $30 or something. It's an app you buy, for through Android or iPhone.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be awesome to check out.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. So tell me more about the amplification of content. How are you amplifying it? You said you do a press release. Do you go just through the wire typically? Just like what website? Like-
We don't use the traditional press release systems. We use a press release system where the press release actually publishes to the website first, so that the website gets the canonical URL. So you actually get two pieces of content, and that press release is then distributed to media sites, 40 to 60 different media sites across the US
Hmm.
that all have domain authority of 50 or higher. So these are meaty inbound links that you're generating. And that's always one of the hardest things to
Yeah.
accomplish from an SEO perspective is generating quality inbound links. And then from an amplification perspective, we build out a 12-month social media campaign for every blog post that we create that keeps driving traffic back
Oh, that's huge.
from social back to the blog post. And it has a really great cumulative effect from a traffic perspective. But what's interesting is in almost every single case, the traffic that's being driven back from these 12-month social media campaigns, they actually lead to greater dwell time because people click around and read other content on the website.
Sure.
So it's turned out to be a really fantastic little system.
Oh, that's so smart. Most people, most companies, most businesses, they post a piece of content. They might send an email about it. They might add it. It's the
Right.
worst when they do like one piece of content a week and they round it up in a newsletter. And that's the only time people see it. And then it's just on the website for forever and no one visits it. But a
Right.
12-month kind of engagement process to kind of cross post it everywhere seems like a really effective way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And by all means, I think you should include it in an email newsletter. I think email still is a really important channel as long as you have a group of people who have legitimately opted in and subscribed to receive that content. Because, it's not just enough to write it and publish it and think that Google is going to make it immediately findable by anybody. So you do need to give it a push. You need to help get it in front of the right eyeballs. And if those eyeballs could be, the people that are subscribing to your newsletter. So you should absolutely do that, but then leverage the power of social media, to get it in front of people who may not normally even be aware of the fact that you exist. And also take advantage of, the serendipity of somebody maybe sharing that piece of content with other people that they know on social media.
Yeah, makes sense. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about financial advisors here specifically. One thing that you and I chatted about kind of before we got on here was how the FINRA regulations have changed just recently. And we're recording this episode in November of 2021.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, the two biggest changes are in regard to social media. You can actually turn on comments now. So before, for certified financial planners who had very rigid compliance requirements that they had to go through, they could post to social media, but they could not let comments be made on social media. That's been relaxed. And so that basically just made it a wall. It's almost like graffiti where they could go write a message on a wall and hope that somebody might see it, but there was no way to really generate engagement. So I think that's an exciting change.
It's
The
conversation instead of a billboard.
Exactly. The other huge thing is that they could not go out and actively ask for reviews, for online reviews. They can now, as of May or June of this year. And so if you want to improve your search rankings locally, especially on the Google Map results, and most financial advisors want to be found by people in their own local market. Now, many
Right.
financial advisors have clients all over the country, but the reason they have those clients all across the country is because they originally got them when they were locally close to where the advisor was, and then they've moved away and they've maintained that relationship. But if you want to win, to be found for financial advisor plus city name, you've got to show up well on that Google Map result. And the best way to do that is to get high quality, consistent Google reviews. And Google looks at this concept of reviews. There's a concept that a lot of people miss called review velocity, meaning how frequently are you getting new reviews?
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. So like just doing a campaign and getting 50 reviews uh, once is good, but it doesn't give you staying power.
for a little while, but those degrade over time. And after 6 months, they start to become a whole lot less important. If you think about it, Google is ultimately trying to make sure that it's giving the highest quality, most relevant information to people who are doing searches. And
Right.
if you went out and you got that batch of 10, 20, 50 reviews and you haven't gotten any more in the last 6 months or 4 or 5 years for that matter, for financial advisors, it wouldn't be that far back. But and somebody else is actively going out there and getting new streams of reviews coming in, one or two a week or even a month, that's going to be seen as more current, more relevant information. And that's going to have a big impact on how they're going to show up in local searches.
Oh, that makes sense. I didn't consider that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. The other thing is the interconnectedness between your Google My Business page, I just saw an article that it's being rebranded. Um, Google My Business is changing names. Can't recall off the top of my head what the name of that is because I just literally saw that article come across 5 minutes before I hopped on with you. But the content that you have on your Google My Business page and the content you have on your website, and the way that you interlink and connect to that, and that's one of the things that we do with our press release tool, is we make sure we embed the Google Map into the press release so that you've got the schema markup to tell Google, this is an advisor working at this location. That helps with local search. It also ties into their Google My Business property because to show up on Google Maps, that is the way you do that is you have to have a Google My Business page. That's the entity that's going to show up on the map. And so that you got to interconnect and interlink this stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it looks like it's Google Business Profile.
Right. There you go. Yeah,
That's the new name of it. Google Business Profile, which honestly, better than Google My Business.
exactly.
GBP doesn't work though as well as GMB. So, all right.
True.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really interesting how you take. I think we all kind of know as marketers like how important local search is. We say things like, "Oh, I know that it's important. It makes sense. I need reviews." But it feels like you've just taken it like a couple steps further than most marketers, which is all about like the velocity of reviews. It's about embedding the Google Map listing inside of a press release so that you get the schema in there. I mean, all those things sound, obviously intelligent, but I think that they're kind of novel too. Do you find that just doing that stuff can set you apart when you're in a more competitive market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's really fun and exciting about the niches that we work in, the financial advisors and the home services related contractors, is that most of their competitors are not doing much of anything. Now, some of them have made big investments in SEO, or they pay a lot for pay-per-click strategy and things like that, more so on the home services than on the financial advisors. Financial advisors really, they've been so hamstrung that they just kind of, in my opinion, they've almost kind of given up and said, I can't really do a whole lot. So I'm just going to have to work kind of the traditional market. I'm going to have to go press the flesh at my local chamber. I'm going to join a business networking group, like maybe Business Networking International, BNI, and that's how I'm going to really grow my business and then rely on word of mouth. But,
Right.
to the power, I mean, the next best thing to word of mouth marketing is a Google review, because
Hmm.
that's, people trust Google reviews as much as they trust recommendations from friends and family. And so, now they have the power of going and getting Google reviews. It's still so novel for an independent financial advisor to be able to go do that, that anybody who jumps on that early is probably going to win pretty quickly, which is not usually something that you can expect to see from a search engine optimization type of a campaign. We work with a lot of painters, for example. Historically, most painting contractors have done very little in terms of marketing. So just doing just doing some things is going to position you pretty well to win pretty quickly, especially in certain markets. I mean, you may not dominate your entire market. It may take a while to build out your SEO for the 5 to 10 cities that you care about ranking for the most, but you can definitely get some big wins from an SEO perspective that are meaningful, not just, some obscure long tail keyword phrase, meaning a word search phrase that you might rank for that has zero traffic. Those are false SEO claims, in my opinion, for most businesses. I mean, most painters need to rank for house painter, a house painter city. If they do residential painting. If they do commercial painting, that's a different animal, obviously. But yeah. So, and then, the other thing about the interlinking between your Google My Business page and what's on your website is, for home services contractors or for independent financial advisors, they're typically going to serve an area of customers. And the financial advisors might have people come to their office, but they're still, going to try to rank for an area, around where they're located. And so you can define what that area is on your Google My Business page by incorporating the service areas. But then you should reinforce that with content that you have on your website about the locations that you serve. And most people, and that's kind of an old SEO strategy, but it
Yeah.
still works really well.
And it makes sense. It's a great user
Having
experience.
local content is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so I want to talk about this. So we just went tactic. Let's talk about you a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I want to understand why you decided, you've got this marketing agency. You've run it for how long? How long's the agency been alive?
Since 2005, so 16 years.
16 years. And you're now in a role of a fractional chief marketing officer.
Yeah.
You came in and you joined the CMOX Accelerator, and you've got your niche with financial services and with residential services, or financial advisors in residential services. And I'm curious, why the move to fractional CMO for you?
Well, a couple of things. One is, I've been fortunate to where I've been able to work on my business, not in my business, most of the time. We all periodically get drugged down a little bit,
Right.
and have to work in the business, and that's fine and that's good. I think it's actually helpful because it keeps us grounded. But I'm excited about the ability. Look, fundamentally, what I like to do is I like to solve problems, and and you've got a great phrase: solve bigger problems. And that's really what I love to do. I love to take a lot of information, synthesize it, develop a plan, a strategy, and kind of work on that. And that's something that I've always done parts of. For every engagement, I always do that strategy work, but I've never really guided somebody else's efforts in the way that I'm excited about being able to do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I think one of the unfair advantages that an agency owner has when they become a fractional CMO is that you have the agency to be able to do the back end work, which I think is pretty neat. So, do you feel like now you have the ability to get into bigger clients potentially, get compensated for the marketing strategy that you were kind of doing before, but now do it kind of more comprehensively, and then uncover work for your agency and then for other people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the challenges that we're all facing right now is, is labor and hiring talent. And so having the ability to leverage a fractional CMO, somebody who lives and breathes and works in this stuff on a daily basis, and can help help set up a structure for a business to be able to succeed, I think is really exciting. And then, being able to bring in some talent, because I think, depending on the business size, they should have their own talent in-house to be able to do certain things. Maybe some of the things they never want to do and they want to outsource that. I think it's a really exciting thing to do, but it can be a challenge to hire the right talent. It's pretty easy to go find somebody who's really good at one channel or one component of marketing, but to be able to have somebody that can look at that big picture, that can say, well, we're doing this campaign over here. We could get serious amplification if we integrated it with this strategy that we've been thinking about or have been already doing over here. But if you have things working in silos, you're missing that amplification opportunity. And,
Right.
the great thing about marketing is, I did a lot of software development work early in my career. You look and I did it for the Department of Defense. So I use this phrase that I borrowed from them, this force multiplier. That's how I try to look at things is how can you get these force multipliers in place for your marketing? And whether that's, hiring somebody that has the strategic vision to be able to see that and do that, and then pull the pieces together to make that happen, I think is really important, whether it's internal team, whether it's an outsourced team or a combination thereof. You've got to be able to take advantage of those things.
Yeah, I think it's a huge deal. I think the marketing agency also can find itself in a place where you're trying to create change, but there's no internal stakeholder change maker. So you're just kind of pushing a boulder up a hill, trying to get people who don't get marketing to try to get marketing.
Right. Right.
But when you're the fractional CMO for that organization, you then are deputized to make those decisions. You're paid for it. So you're going to spend the time to get the right strategy that might include your agency, or it might include hiring an internal person, or it might include hiring a competitive agency because they're the right person to hire, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, this has been really helpful. I learned a lot about, like, I guess I was reminded of the benefits of local search and content marketing. But then I think you just took it like two steps past what I've kind of been experienced in. And
Cool.
I think that that's like, it's neat because it's, what we want to master, I think, in business to be successful long term are the slow to change principles. And you brought up multiple times things that are kind of old, that are kind of new again because they're so classic to the customer experience or the customer journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing is, what's worked well for SEO classically still works really well for SEO.
Yeah.
I mean, people are always trying to find a way to game the system, and they might be successful and they may win for a little while, but usually if it's too black hat, they're going to get slapped down. We've never taken on those approaches. Honestly, the best way to build your search engine optimization is by producing quality content that speaks to the ideal customers that you're trying to reach. It's going to align with the search phrases that they're typing into the search engines, and it's going to communicate effectively and get people in that journey. And it's really important for everybody to realize that, the customer has so much more control over the buyer's journey than they ever have. And, you've got to realize that and build out a set of content that aligns with the way people naturally buy.
Hmm.
And whether it's moving through that know, like, and trust phase to understand and qualify who they even want to consider for doing business with before they ever pick up the phone and call you or schedule a consultation online. What content do you need to have in place to make that happen? Do you need to have blog posts? Do you need to be doing social media? Do you need to have lead magnets like an ebook or a checklist, or letting them sign up for a webinar, or, for home contractors, scheduling a consultation is kind of that opportunity to say, okay, this is a company I'm interested in working with. I want to see what it would be like to get a bid from them. And, that's taking that next step, but they still have control over the buying decision.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. Totally. I love it. I love it. All right, Ken. Well, I learned a ton here today. And where can listeners follow you or get in touch with you?
So they can find us on social media just at Changescape. And then our website is changescapeweb.com.
Awesome. Ken, it's been a lot of fun. Really appreciate having you inside the CMOX Accelerator. Excited for you to be winning business there and serving as a fractional CMO. And hope everyone got something out of this. If you learned something, if you laughed, if you took notes and you're going to be using this in your business, please go ahead and give us a review on the podcast app that you're using. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, wherever. Go there, give us a rating, give us a review. Let us know what you think about this episode and the podcast at large. And Ken, with that, we'll take off. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Casey. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. For more information and episodes, visit our site at fractionalcmoshow.com. Go ahead and punch that like and subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. It means a lot, at least to my mom.